Here we are. Welcome to the Leo Zagami show, Leo and Christy, for our special event, Saturday, the Leo Zagami show with Leo and Christy. Today, Saturday, October 28th of the year of the Lord 2023. This is going to be a very special one indeed. Show. We are now with this Exploring the Illuminati Occult series, the number 39, and we are discussing today the Antichrist. Ooh, Christy, here we go with the sponsors who permit this wonderful show.
Okay, we would like to thank Philippe Belair, Malgorzata Minta, Ronaldo Gonzalez, Dennis Bolanos Henriquez, and we have an Anonymous and Bruce Kodish.
Let me see here. Malgorzata Minta. Reynaldo Gonzalez. From now on, the Latin names, I think I'm gonna be pronouncing the Latin names.
Okay. I can do Japanese names.
Okay, that's okay. So welcome everybody. We are broadcasting for the first time on 5 different channels, 2 on Facebook and 3 on YouTube. Thanks to you, thanks to your donations, we were able to purchase a special streaming extra service, professional HD.
We're trying to fix our show, guys.
Yeah, we're trying to get it together.
You haven't had any audio problems since you did it, right?
No, we are.
Okay,
I guess that we are sorted out with this new setup. It seems working much better, but of course we will all always invest more of whatever donations we receive to make this show more professional. Okay, so Exploring the Illuminati brings you another fantastic episode, and here we are with our dance.
Wow, you ran into me.
Okay. Oh, well, what a subject, especially with everything that is going on in the world. This is a very interesting and at the same time a little bit controversial subject, because we will try during the show today to also try to push forward a few names and try to make it better. So here we go. Of course, like I said, we are in a difficult moment. I just published an article yesterday on Zagami.com where I talked about this legendary technical analyst who is predicting 2 billion people will die in the next war cycle, which of course is something that many have been predicting, but this guy, Charles Nenner, he actually gave 2 billion. 2 billion is an incredible number. And he is also described as a legendary technical analyst by Forbes. He's a medical doctor. He has been an analyst for over 30 years. His unique models have been also working for Goldman Sachs. So somebody like him talking about how this cycle is part of a bigger cycle of 3 wars, because it's World War I, World War II, and now we have World War III. And
I can't believe we're here now.
Well, we are here now, and we are here in a very particular moment in history where, of course, then people start talking, of course, of the Messiah, of the Antichrist, which will, of course, be coming before the Messiah, will anticipate the second coming. So that's why it's so important. And we had also just a couple of days ago from Benjamin Netanyahu. He evoked a religious prophecy in the Israel-Gaza war speech he gave. It was quite unusual to bring up Isaiah 16:18, but let's go and check out this specific passage of Netanyahu's speech, which of course will shed more light on what we are discussing today. In the light of prophecy, we are trying to understand who might be this Antichrist and where we are really in this time, in this prophetic timeline. So we will, of course, go through various books, and I think that it's important to clarify for a lot of people who might be this Antichrist, and if we're gonna see him in our lifetime, because that's also something, you know, people think, oh no, maybe this is not really the moment in which he will manifest. Instead, he might manifest right now, right here, right now. So let's see Netanyahu evoking this religious prophecy. Welcome everybody to the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy. It's gonna be an interesting episode, so please share it, put like, and I'm sure you're gonna gain some interesting points, at least from today's show. That's my it's like my mission for today.
We are in the midst of a war over our existence. We set two goals for this war: to wipe out Hamas by eradicating both its military and governmental capabilities, and to do anything and everything possible in order to bring our hostages back home. All Hamas activists must die, above the ground, beneath the ground, inside Gaza, and outside of Gaza. Together with Minister of Defense Gallant, the Minister Benny Gantz, the Security Cabinet, Chief of General Staff, and the heads of the security forces, we are working around the clock in order to carry out and execute the goals of our war until victory. And we do so without any political considerations. The only thing we care about is saving this country and obtaining victory. We are bringing down lethal fire on Hamas.
So we have seen, of course, this lethal fire pouring down, especially since yesterday. The operation seems to be expanding, but it's right at the end of this speech that we find the prophetic element being inserted by Netanyahu.
Citizens of Israel, October 7th was a very dark and black day in our history. We will fully investigate what had happened at our southern border, the border with Gaza. Everybody will have to provide answers, myself included, but all that will happen only after the war. As a prime minister, I'm responsible for guaranteeing the future of this country, and now my role is to lead all Israelis, the state of Israel and the people of Israel, to an overpowering victory. It is now a time to come together for one purpose: to storm ahead to achieve victory. With joint forces and a profound belief in our justness, a profound belief in the eternity of the Jewish people, we shall realize the prophecy of Isaiah. There will no longer be stealing at your borders, and your gates will be of glory. Together we will fight. Together we will win.
So the mention, of course, of this passage from Isaiah has created a lot of additional problems and tension in this situation. Now I saw immediately in the chat being evoked the myth of the Khazarian mafia. I would like to point out that we have already talked and hopefully explained, but people don't seem to get it. The Jews of Khazaria never really existed as indigenous people. They were simply converts, and they disappeared within within a few centuries, and all this relevance that today we are giving to the Khazarians, in reality we should give to the Shabbatian Frankists. It is this information which the Shabbatian Frankists have courted to bring more anti-Semitic hate and ideas which I completely don't support. So if you want to know more about the Khazarians, The Jews of Khazaria is an excellent book by Kevin Allenbrook. I've also talked extensively about the Shabbatian Frankists in all my books, including Volume 9, my latest book. I've also talked about their connections with the Jesuits, about the significance of this heresy, from Volume 4 of my confession. So I don't want to repeat myself, but it seems like people are really obsessed with this information that unfortunately even people within the alternative media are embracing, and it's really damaging. I think David Icke did a great thing to actually pinpoint the whole thing on the Shabbatian Frankists, but there is many other people in the alternative media that are still spewing this nonsense about the Khazarian mafia, which maybe will require an additional show in the future, because at this point we might have to, just clarify.
A show about it?
Well, I mean,
didn't you do a show at Colin Rivas?
Yeah, but I mean, people don't get it, so maybe we need to do an additional one. In any case, let's talk about the subject of today, because it's very important for where we are now to actually discuss. First of all, as you have just heard, even Netanyahu is somehow mentioning an important prophecy, the prophecy of Isaiah, that in his own words should become a reality, is actually violence shall no more be heard in your land, devastation or destruction within your borders. You should call your walls salvation and your gates praise. So this is an important prophecy. But of course, when it comes to wars and rumors of wars, which is also a citation from the New Testament I use in Volume 9 of my confession, we are here with the prophecies that are manifesting and happening. And people, of course, are understanding that the war in Israel might become really a fulfillment of the prophecies. Already, you see, when, for example, this guy here who died in 1918, he was a Scotland Yard, and he was actually talking about what will happen now, the decline of the Ottoman Empire that was being dismembered, and of course the restoration of the Jews in Palestine. He discusses this. In fact, you should maybe read this little paragraph here from here.
Okay. On the other hand, the analogy of the past would lead us to expect a merging of the one dispensation in the other, rather than an abrupt transition. And the question is one of peculiar interest on general grounds, whether passing events are not tending towards this very consummation, the restoration of the Jews to Palestine.
And the restoration of the Jews to Palestine came into fruition in 1948. And of course, we discussed it both last week and prior to last week also. I mean, we have really, I think, analyzed deeply the various implications and why also the Jews are titled to their land. And of course, why, unfortunately, certain Arabs, the Palestinians, have been somehow used by the other surrounding nations to, in the end, become this scapegoat, this justification for this eternal hate of the Jewish people that seems to be never ending. So we hope that it's important for all of you today to understand the arrival of the Antichrist in this context. Now, it is almost 50 years to the day, of course, that we had the Yom Kippur War back in 1973, when Israel was attacked by Egypt, Syria, and others. This led to a major crisis also, for the rest of the world, because imagine if tomorrow morning suddenly all the OPEC countries will stop selling us oil, when we have already, with the first war that this present administration has engaged in, cut the oil and the gas from Russia. So, I mean, here we have somebody in the White House who, first of all, the first thing he did when he arrived in the White House, he made us no longer energy independent by stopping the pipelines, stopping the construction, and doing all other nonsense regarding what Trump was trying to do, which is to be energy independent. Then on top of that, he engaged in a war. He basically didn't do enough to stop the actions of Vladimir Putin. And later on, of course, there was this blockade of the gas and the oil from Russia, which we eventually turned out to buy now at even higher prices from maybe India or other countries that simply get it from Russia and then resell it to us. In any case, and then now imagine what will happen tomorrow. I mean, it could lead to consequences that will completely eliminate or at least damage severely our economy. But these people don't care. They don't care because they want the green economy. They want us broke. They want us broke, but they want us happy. So they want us all dragged up and playing video games at home or in some virtual reality cage. I don't know. This is really the age of the Antichrist. The age of the Antichrist is made out of this reality, which, of course, people like Yuval Noah Harari and Davos are pushing on us. I mean, the fact that today a guy like Recep Erdogan, in front of 100,000 people, could threaten a war with Israel, and at the same time he could even mention Davos. I said that Davos this and that. I mean, of course, that means that we are heading towards some very dark times. So,
are we there already?
Yeah, well, I hope not. Now, thousands of rockets rained on Israel in the last few weeks from multiple directions, and Hamas gunmen on the 7th of October invaded by land, sea, and sky. Now, hundreds of people have been murdered and kidnapped, thousands actually, and of course, on the other side, also thousands of people died. And all this has brought the war also to a new level by using the Captagon drug. They mimic ISIS. They made these assassins, which are almost children, because the majority of the people who live in Gaza is very young. And with this Captagon drug, they created these brutal assassins that arrived.
So what is this drug?
It's a form of amphetamine.
It's like meth?
It makes you very aggressive. It's called the cocaine of the poor. And so with this kind of scenario, imagine on the 7th of October, all these zombie, brainwashed, and also very aggressive, drugged up, arrived in a situation which was probably set up for them, because I'm not so sure about the genuinity of those rave organizers, but in a rave, everybody was on ecstasy, was stoned, was probably all joyous, and suddenly this monstrosity arrived, and they were definitely the sacrificial victims of something that started on the 7th of October. But remember that Israel is a place that has the right to exist, and if we need to criticize somebody here, we need to criticize, of course, we need to go back in time, and I think that what we did in the last couple of weeks has clarified for a lot of people the history behind Israel, behind the controversies on Temple Mount, and so on. So we know from Rabbi Marvin Antelman, from my late friend Barry Kamish, and other people, our friend Bruce Kodish, who is here in the chat, we know how, unfortunately, the people of Palestine have been used for this purpose, to continue with this never-ending hate, which, of course, serve also the purpose of, in some way sabotaging the right of Israel to exist. But remember that the right of Israel to exist is also sanctioned by all the disasters that the great powers of Europe, in one way or another, did against the Jewish people. But without going further into something that is not pertaining with today's show, you see, we have seen the targeting of young women, children, this indiscriminate destruction and war on both sides. It becomes a monstrosity in the end. But who are Israel enemies? Who is Hamas? They are a terrorist organization. They are, of course, founded by Iran, and that's not a secret. In fact, a spokesman for Iran, Ghazi Ahmad, told the BBC that terrorist group Hamas had received funding for the attack to the Wall Street Journal. So this is even confirmed. And it's really weird that nobody has yet done anything, and that Iran can continue being what they are, because they are really evil. Let me tell you guys, after the end of Persia and the Shah, what we have now in Iran is truly satanic. In fact, I have a book actually by Ali Aksha, who is the guy who attempted the assassination of Jean Paul II.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book in which he explained how he was indoctrinated, and how he was also in Iran to prepare himself for what he would do. And he actually wrote that in Iran there is a satanic sects that work behind the scenes within Shia Islam. So these clerics of Shia Islam are not so pious as they show, but they are also using black magic and Satanism, just so we have a clear idea. Now, they of course are always attacking Israel and America. This is obvious. The great Satan. America is described as a great Satan. But when it comes to Jerusalem, this little tiny but very significant city that will see definitely the interest of the whole world in the last day, it is definitely the focal point of the end times event. It's amazing when you think about it, because in Zechariah 12:3-4, God says, I will make Jerusalem like an intoxicating drink that makes the nearby nations stagger when they send their army to besiege Jerusalem and Judah. On that day, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock. All the nations will gather against it to try to move it, but they will only hurt themselves. So it's important that that also we understand the irony of Biden giving $6 billion to Iran just before this whole thing happened. Like we are sponsoring our own assassins, and then we see things that are out of this world. So the manifestation of the Antichrist in this scenario, it's when we see, and I'm going to show you something. When we see, for example, what is happening in the streets of London, in the streets of Italy, and in the streets of America, in Tulane University, where 40% of the students are Jewish people. Look what happened today. I mean, this is really what we didn't want to see in the United States of America.
Fuck you! We need help.
And of course, we have the majority of universities and schools in the West that from the end of the 60s onwards have been just a depository of never-ending left-wing brainwashing and Islamic support. Now, Islamo-communism is somehow a paradox, but it's very much a reality, and I've been talking about it also in my books because it's something that needed to be addressed. In any case, we are, of course, here to understand how this biblical prophecy that is unfolding in front of our eyes, what will produce. It could produce a conflict we read about in Ezekiel 38. The Bible says that Magog will come against her will. The Bible describes hooks in her jaws, pulling her forward as though Magog is coming in reluctantly among whither are like Persia or Iran. So you see there is a direct reference to Persia, Iran. And of course, Gog and Magog have also been, there's always been an interpretation of these two words and what they really mean. But it also, for us, as at least me, as Christians, and also as people who sustain the Jewish cause and the right to exist, because Israel has the right to exist. Jesus said in Luke 21:28, now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. So not all things are evil and that are manifesting are evil. They actually, there is elements that bring us also some hope in the future. So when we talk about the Antichrist, we need to know what does it mean? I mean, he is Satan's Messiah. He is the opposite of everything that Jesus was. Jesus was born from a virgin, and of course, Satan instead is born out of a whore, Satan's boy, the Antichrist. So everything that is opposite to Jesus is this figure that is gradually manifesting. Some people have seen it more as a current. Now, for example, there is this very curious guy who seems to be making a lot of prophecies. He's a psychic who, though studies the Kabbalah, is called Altos. I'm going to show you in a second. As soon as I managed to work out here the problems regarding the cookies access, which is always a little bit annoying. The cookies. Just a second, because this is a little bit complex and I have to work it out. In the meantime, of course, I want to thank once again all our sponsors that we have thanked already at the beginning of the show, because they are giving us the possibility to get more equipment and to manage to bring the show probably to a more professional level in the coming months. It's not easy to bring you a show live like this one. Many other people, they simply do, either they have, a studio with 20 people like at InfoWars, or they do everything edited. It's not live. We like the live feel. So we like to stay live. Now, let's go to this interesting article which I wanted to show you. And is Psychic warns Antichrist will return in chilling 2023 prediction. Now, there is a lot being said about 2023, because also Nostradamus has made some prediction about the return of the Antichrist in 2023. Seems like really this is a peculiar year. And we know that aside from the Bible, all the New Testament, Nostradamus and his predictions have always been kind of accurate. Some say no, but a lot of people say very accurate. Now we have this Athos Salome. Well, look at this guy. I don't know. Who is he? Barbie's husband. I don't know. It looks a little bit weird.
Evil Barbie's husband.
Evil Barbie's husband. Okay. So a man who has been predicting the future for 2 decades has revealed 2 decades. I mean, how old is this guy? Maybe a lot of plastic surgery. Huh? Anyway, a man who has been predicting the future for 2 decades has revealed that the Antichrist will return in 2023. Others, who is known as the living Nostradamus, they call him.
This guy?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't listen to him.
Well,
He's got evil eyes.
It's a good idea. Others has previously suggested that he predicted COVID, the Queen's death, Russian invasion of Ukraine. And even,
maybe he reads your books.
Maybe he read my books. Maybe. The Brazilian, he's apparently Brazilian, claims he had a vision ahead of the new year that showed the enemy of the Messiah wreaking havoc on Earth between 2023 and 2026. Now, this could, though, be, maybe a little bit accurate.
But you don't have to be a psychic to know that. It's so obvious.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
I mean, it's obvious. We've been saying it's the end times for so long.
Now, you see, let's go back into history. How many people have been called Antichrist? And let's understand also if somebody closer to us could really be the Antichrist at this point, because we have, of course, a lot of predictions. And we have discussed just now somebody who is called the new Nostradamus. But going back to the old Nostradamus, when they went into this year, they definitely started presenting 2003 with very negative terms. Like they said, if 2022 was bad, just wait and see what 2023 is going to bring you. And we are not disappointed with the predictions, because actually it seems like negative things have happened, and it's getting worse. So, I mean, Zagami said it first.
Well, you were saying this. You were saying all this stuff in 2000. Well, when I was reading your books in 2009, you were saying all this stuff.
War in Ukraine, death of the Queen, Elon Musk, still winning commerce. And here you see that the bad news is that if you thought 2022 was a rotten year, don't tell yourself that 2023 will be any better. Nostradamus writings are now being used for forecast a European apocalypse. The basis of the prediction is a 7 month the Great War, people dead of evil doing.
I hope you Italians left Italy. I really hope you did. And if you didn't, you get yourself a backpack and you just start walking out.
Yeah, I guess so. So, I mean, it says here that in 2022, Nostradamus is a literary phenomenon. It still is. I mean, it seems like it's still a very relevant figure, and his quatrains seems to still gather a lot of interest. So here we are instead talking, of course, about the Antichrist. The Antichrist, and we needed to understand a little bit better about this Antichrist. Now, for example, many years ago, I made a prediction in this article. It was the year 2008 when I wrote this article for Rents.com. It actually became a classic. And in fact, from that moment onwards...
I didn't even know you.
Yeah. From that moment onwards...
Who edited it?
Just I was like, with my friends trying to help me out. Here we have Obama, Freemason, ready to both Bush. When I did this article, at the end of the article, I wrote, maybe the next Antichrist to hit. He wasn't even elected as a president yet. I was just saying he will be the next president. So I was already making this prediction. And maybe the next Antichrist to hit the U.S. presidential scene will be darker than some people expected.
Well, he's basically still there with Biden. So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically
and
the
he
same
might
thing.
really have a very important role in the coming months. So what I wanted to show you here is what happened when in 2011, during a fundraiser, I think in Hollywood, he was actually called the Antichrist, and how he reacted. And it's not the first, and it's not the only time, because the same thing will happen 3 years later. So I want, and apparently it happened also other times. People started to go to his events, to Obama's events, and call him the Antichrist. And the reaction is pretty interesting. You know, this is, I mean, it was also reported on the news back then. I can show you. This was actually the news clip, and then we can go on the Obama clip. Here we are.
Fundraising trip. Mr. Obama was in Los Angeles last night at several fundraisers, pitching his jobs plan and rallying supporters. But at one stop, he was interrupted by a heckler. The president's trip ends today in Denver, where he accepted the Democratic presidential nomination 3 years ago.
Yeah, sure. Now, that was basically a long time ago, Obama being some way addressed as the Antichrist, but it wasn't the only time. And I want to show you this Obama's raw footage again of when he gets called the Antichrist. And then we can move to another episode that happened in 2014 where it was even worse, where the guy went literally berserk on him, shouting he was the Antichrist.
We must have some members of Congress here. Well, there you go, Dennis. Where? Hey, how are you? I want to thank.
Christian God is the one and only true living God, the creator of heaven and the universe. Jesus Christ is God. Jesus Christ is God. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Jesus Christ is the Son of God.
I agree.
You are an Antichrist because he said,
It's incredible. I find it kind of incredible how the crowd arrives and says 4 more years after all this. But check out what happens in this other moment of embarrassment for Obama when he has somebody who literally goes, like I said, completely berserk. This happens when he is, of course, already re-elected to the second term. But before I show you that, there was actually an article, and I think this article must have been made with some kind of a sick sense of humor. It came out in 2008. It was an article by CBS, and this whole column was called President-elect Obama is the Antichrist. So, I mean, they were almost like telling us, but nobody wanted to see. I think that this article deserves maybe a read from our beautiful Christy here, and as soon as it appears on the screen, of course. We're waiting. Sometimes it takes a little bit. But we are getting better, guys. We are getting better. Like I said, all the money that you're sending, a lot of it we're going to invest in better equipment. So hopefully we will be able to offer you also a better product along the way. Now, column. President-elect Barack Obama is the Antichrist. Okay.
Make it big.
Yes, I make it big. November 11, 2008. And that was actually, because we got engaged in November 11, but a few years later.
2011, 11.
Okay, so here we are with the article.
I've been saying it for almost 2 years now. Messiah-elect Barack Obama is the freaking Antichrist. And the only person who's agreed with me, ironically, is conservative madman and talk radio racist Rush Limbaugh. It's absolutely true, though. Seriously, Google Antichrist and you'll find
Oh man.
Oh man.
Oh man.
But in my best Maverick impression, I tell you, my friends, at least he's not Sarah Palin or George W. Bush. Oh, the taste of that name in my mouth. It's like Vegemite spread over cow pie.
Now, these people, of course, are leftists, and I don't know if they're making a joke, but
I don't
it's
know.
pretty sick. Okay, go.
Wait. I must calm myself with my Republican prescribed mantra. Fuck trees, fuck cars.
Oh, whatever.
Whatever. I digress. Back to my point. Obama is the Antichrist.
Okay, so here we are, just a second. So let's go back into this very weird article that CBS published in 2008.
Okay. It all makes sense. A characteristic neophyte just took
A
the White House.
charismatic.
Charismatic neophyte just took the White House. He inspired a generation of disaffected young people. He does that awesome. Silent look up and away thing in between his beautiful rhetoric. He's a black man. He's irresistible to women and men. He's funny when he wants to be, serious when it matters, and his antenna-like ears have allowed him to actually listen to grumbling of the working middle class.
Yeah, sure. Okay,
Yeah,
let's go a little bit forward with this whole thing, because
wait, if Obama's the Antichrist, according to the Revelation chapter 20, verse 10, he must have a false prophet. That's a no-brainer. Oprah.
Okay, let's go now, though, back to the time in which I was talking to you about. He was basically addressed once again as the Antichrist, because this time, as you will see, it was done in an even more passionate way by somebody who literally went completely crazy and started to shout. They had to bring him out. This guy was, of course, arrested by Obama's security. But what happens, and what I'm about to show you, is very significant, because we will I will list a whole list of, people who have been called Antichrist. But I still believe that there is at the moment at least 3 candidates that fit better than others this role. One is Barack Hussein Obama, the other one is Prince William, and the other one is King Charles. So these 3 people I find very much more Antichrist than others.
Why?
Because then you see, the Antichrist, you have Antichrist, but Antichrist is a term at times used for many people, for a current, or for, like, for example, Martin Luther called the Pope the Antichrist and Islam the Antichrist. And the same also for Calvin. The Turks were the Antichrist, but also the Pope was the Antichrist.
They call the Pope the Antichrist then.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is Martin Luther and Calvin. They started, of course, the Reformation, and they protested, the Protestant movement, so, I mean...
My dad was Protestant.
So they will not be protesting. But let's see now what happened with Barack Hussein Obama. I don't find Prince Harry a candidate because he might not even be the son of King Charles.
Ooh.
so let's see here if we can get the volume. See this guy?
Jesus Christ created heaven and the universe! Jesus Christ created heaven and the universe! You are Antichrist! You are Antichrist! You are Antichrist! You will be destroyed! You will be destroyed! Antichrist! Antichrist! You will be destroyed! You will be destroyed, Antichrist! You will be destroyed! You are Antichrist! You will be destroyed!
Look at all the other idiots who say, who the hell is that? Oh, weird. Obama, we love you. And all this bullshit.
I'm glad I wasn't in America when that was going on. That was crazy.
I mean, it's...
That whole Obama thing. I was in Italy. It was a communist country, so I don't know if that was better. I learned about communism when I moved to Italy.
Well, we are trying to bring you all the answers to your questions. Of course, we can't always follow in real time your questioning from the chat board. So remember that we might miss at times, because we are also involved in all the rest. So if we miss your question, please repeat it down the line after a few minutes, and we might be able to at least interact with you if you find it interesting, and also adding to the present discussion. So, like I said, there has been various antichrists in history. Now we need to, of course, understand who were these various antichrists. Obama definitely has been a candidate, but there has been also many others. What do you think of Obama as a candidate to the office of Antichrist?
I think he's a pretty good candidate.
Definitely. I mean, you see, the character of Antichrist, the first Antichrist is said to have been Nero. And behind Nero, this emperor, there is a lot of connections also with the number 666. I mean, the future Antichrist will or should manifest in the tribulation period for mankind. In Daniel, of course, we have also some references that are very interesting. The prophet Daniel is, of course, accepted both by the Jews and by the Christians, who have also added some other elements that then were purged by the Protestant Reformation, but still are validated within the Catholic and Orthodox tradition. In the revelation recorded in Daniel chapters 2 and 7 through 9, Daniel learned that because of their sin, the people of Israel will be kept under gentle domination for 77 of years, 77 of years. Now, this might mean 400 and I don't know how many years. In any case, these gentle nations that usually were depicted back then were Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and the Messiah will destroy this kingdom and institute a righteous kingdom with Israel back in the place of blessing. After, of course, the first temple we had, the Babylonian captivity, then we had the second temple. From Daniel's point of view, history is what we see around 536 before Christ. So we have to also see it in that kind of context. Nero, this emperor, is seen as a possible candidate as Antichrist, because even when he died, he was seen as somebody who could come back to life. I mean, there was people calling themselves Nero Redivivus, like Nero reborn, and he was definitely somebody who persecuted the Christians, and so he deserved to be in some way an Antichrist figure. Though, I mean, when it comes down to Nero, he is definitely very much known for burning Rome, though there is also a lot of controversy if it was really him, if it was the Christians. There has always been a lot of controversy regarding that. The Sibyl is said to present Nero both as a king of Rome and the means of God's retribution in destroying it, because for the Jews, they had, that was the period of the persecution that will lead to the destruction also of the temple by the Romans. So we have, of course, many antichrists, and it's difficult to go through all of them, but definitely Napoleon was also indicated as an antichrist, for example. And there was, of course, that connected to the quatrains of Nostradamus, as well as Adolf Hitler, who is also being portrayed as a possible second Antichrist. In the vision of the prophecies made by Nostradamus, not that they are, of course, the Bible, but they have this, they envision a third Antichrist, which will be the ultimate Antichrist. And of course, this is, I think, very important to understand that many people in history have been called Antichrist. I mean, for example, now I'm going to give you a whole list of them that might be, like I said, Nero was one, probably the first, but then we had the Emperor Constantius in the 4th century, who basically persecuted the Orthodox Christian and favored congregation that denied the deity of Jesus. He was almost agnostic, and so Athanasius saw him as an Antichrist. That's why he was indicated as Antichrist. Then we have Pope Leo X. Now, he was the Antichrist, but like I said a moment ago, for Martin Luther, who was rebelling to the Church of Rome. So he was an Antichrist. Martin Luther wrote a note to Pope Leo X entitled "Against the Execrable Bull of the Antichrist," and not surprisingly, the Pope did not respond positively to this missive. Napoleon, like I said, was seen as the Antichrist, and he was seen by the Antichrist, in particularly by a Russian, very controversial and super Orthodox group that didn't accept the reforms of the Orthodox Church. They are known as the Old Believers. The Old Believers or Old Ritualists are basically Eastern Orthodox Christians who maintain the liturgy and ritual practices of the Russian Orthodox Church, how they were prior to 1666, which is a very particular year, as we know. So this branch of the Eastern Orthodox Church believed later on that Napoleon was definitely an Antichrist. But we have also other figures, of course, that were Antichrist. Like I said just a moment ago, Adolf Hitler, because if you assign the value of 100 to the letter A, then 101 to the letter B, and so on, it adds up to 666.
Really?
Yes. We have also an indication that for many, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was actually an Antichrist. Now we have the what is it, the nephew?
Who?
Robert Fitzgerald Jr.
Oh, yeah. RFK.
The son of his brother.
I don't know.
Yeah, the son of his brother was killed, and he was killed too.
But yeah, he's the son of Bobby Kennedy.
And he has been begging today the White House to give him protection, but the White House doesn't want to give him any protection. So
protection for what?
He had actually attempts to his own life this week. In one day, he had the same person entering the home 2 times. I mean, it's like he's really,
what? Really?
Yeah, he's really having some serious problem, and Joe Biden is not giving him the protection that he deserves as a presidential candidate. Now, I don't agree with the Kennedy's politics, because they're too leftists. He's in it for reparations for the.
Oh, he wants that.
He wants the reparations for the Afro-American. I mean, that's completely wrong. But in any case, you have to protect him, because if he dies, the responsibility will definitely be on Joe Biden if he doesn't give him the Secret Service protection. However, now he's an independent candidate, so I doubted that he will be interested in giving anything. And he's judged almost as a nonsense from the White House. So, so he's really at risk. He probably will have to pay for his own security. I don't know how he does it. In any case, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, his uncle, received 666 votes at the 1956 Democratic Convention, and he later died of a head wound. And for that reason, some people thought that he was the Antichrist. Now, another candidate to the office of Antichrist in recent times has been Henry Kissinger. Now, Rabbi Marvin Alterman conducted even an excommunication ritual against somebody he saw as the typical example manifestation of a Sabbatean Frankist. Henry Kissinger, though, is still alive and kicking, over 100, still going around the world, still very powerful. Kissinger, as you know, was a Middle East peacemaker, and he will probably have a role now in what is happening. His name in Hebrew adds up to 111, 666 divided by 6. So you might say, well, it's just a coincidence, but it is definitely something. Another candidate to the office of Antichrist is Mikhail
Gorbachev?
Yes, Mikhail.
Wait, he brought the wall down
Gorbachev.
with Reagan. Don't put Reagan up there next. I don't know what.
No, I'm telling you, these are people who have been accused of being Antichrist. Now, he was a world leader, but he was also a Freemason. He was initiated, in a way, inside the New World Order, betrayed his own country. After, the end of the Soviet Union, he was definitely not liked in Russia. When I went there, the first times in Russia, I expected people to, he liberated us from communism. Instead, he was really viewed in a negative way, like the guy who sold out the country to the West. Now, he was a world leader with a mysterious birthmark on his head, if you remember. And maybe it looked like a 6 if you stared at it long enough, but we don't know about that. Now, another candidate to the Antichrist is John Paul II. John Paul II recovered from a serious gunshot after an assassination attempt. As every pope in history, he's often risked, like other popes, to be called an Antichrist. But in the case of John Paul II, well, he had a lot of skeletons in the closet.
No, he's my favorite president, except for Donald Trump.
Another candidate
No.
to the office of Antichrist is said to be Ronald Wilson Reagan. Now, we know that a lot of you like Ronald Reagan. I think that the Reagan form of government and economics was brilliant, and I visited America during his presidency, and it was a great memory of my childhood. In any case,
we all stood up and said the Pledge of Allegiance.
Absolutely. It was a great time for America. I mean, I went there, I was 12 years old, and both New York, Rhode Island. I mean, I visited America.
And he stood up in the movie theater, and he really remembered that, and he had to put his hand
more than once.
And he really liked it.
Yes, definitely.
Remember, we used to have to do that. That was cool.
Yeah, that was definitely very good. It was a different time when America wanted to be America, when the people who were in power were promoting American values, not Chinese values. They were not selling out the country to the enemy like is happening today with Washington, D.C. Now, Ronald Reagan, though, had 6 letters in each name. Plus, he recovered from a wound that seemed fatal, which is also a characteristic that is said to be of the Antichrist. And he also used to hang around a bit too much at the Bohemian Grove, as he was a member of the Bohemian Club.
I don't understand that. Everybody's demented.
Everybody's demented. You can find
Barney
more
the
about
dinosaur. What?
Yes, in the list of people, or in this case, fictitious creatures, we have even Barney the dinosaur accused of Barney.
I love you, you love me. We're a happy family.
Yeah, I know, but I talk about Barney and the way they use this music for torturing people in Guantanamo. Volume 8 of my confession. Now, Barney the
dinosaur. My 20s were full of Barney. So. Yes.
Write cute purple dinosaur in ancient Latin characters, and it becomes basically cute purple dinosaur. Exactly the number of letters, the Roman numbers, actually add all the numerals together, and the result is, of course, 666.
Okay.
I know. Maybe it's far-fetched, but that's how it is. Now, Obama, like we said, is somebody who really people love to call the Antichrist, and probably maybe he's. I mean,
He's got this.
he got the character.
Yeah.
He's got the characteristics of the. Apart from being with, apart from the mystery of Big Mike. Now,
I don't.
No, okay. Apart from Big Mike or not Big Mike, but there is something strange that happened in the last week with Obama. You remember the chef that died in very strange circumstances? Obama's chef near where he lives there, where now apparently there is evidence that his phone was used during the emergency of this guy who died. He was found drowning, but there is even a video I showed on my Italian show of this guy swimming in the swimming pool and being very strong. And
I've heard this before.
now, why did he die? Was he homosexual? Did he have a love affair with Barack Hussein Obama? Ask Big Mike. Okay, next one. But that's how it is.
Oh, my friend Kathy probably thinks Bill Gates is the Antichrist.
Well, in fact, Bill Gates is in our chart of the biggest Antichrist of all time, or at least those who have been accused of being one. None of the, I mean, you can turn it around however you want, but his name doesn't really adapt to 666. But let's face it, he is the guy who has created now, probably with Microsoft and with his company, the first during the pandemic, this virtual depository for your digital currency, for your Bitcoin within your own body system, which is basically something that is, and then with the number 060606, which it's like the mark of the beast. Now, remember that in Revelation, we don't really have the Antichrist, but we have, of course, the beast and the mark of the beast. So I mean, Bill Gates is definitely a guy who is connected to the beast.
The World Wide Web.
The World Wide Web. Now, yes, the World Wide Web has always been connected to the number 666, and I explain you why. Also I mean, I did it also in my books, but World Wide Web is the Antichrist because the Hebrew equivalent of W is the letter Vav, which does basically in Hebrew becomes the number 6. And it's been suggested that Vav would equal 666. And the Hebrew Gematria has no notion of tens place. I mean, there is some controversy, but for some people, 666 is www. I mean, of course, it could just be a stretching a little bit too much certain things, like Gematria, which is, of course, you have Gematria Notaricon, the way of calculating letters and numbers and getting a certain deeper significance within, of course, the Kabbalistic tradition. I want to move forward, but I wanted to also explain you who were the possible candidates. And at the same time, though, I also want to talk to you about the coming of this Antichrist. And the coming of the Antichrist right now, as we are living this incredible period, we always find, of course, a lot of how we can say of directions, of inspirations to where we are now from a prophecy that is given to us in Daniel 11. And also this started in Daniel 10. If you go back, you can understand basically that there is prophecy that is manifesting every day. And at one point, there is the prophecy of a Messiah figure that arrives to take control of Israel and then betrays Israel. Now, this tribulation in our future has not yet fully manifested, but it will. And we see the stage set today for what we know as the last 7-year period to fulfill God's prophetic word to Daniel in chapter 9. And he will bring the Messiah, establish his kingdom, and he will fulfill his promises for the nation. We will then be introduced to the kingdom age, which is the 1,000-year reign of Christ, the greater white throne judgment, where the wicked dead are resurrected, and then the new heaven and new earth, the eternal state. But we have also a moment in which we have a figure that might enter the Holy of Holies of the newly established fair temple, and then put his own image in there. And that is something that has always been a fascinating prophecy, and something that people have always been discussing. And at times they think that any form of Jewish Messiah will be the Antichrist, which is completely wrong. Of course, there is here a very different perception of the messianic figure, because Jesus comes from the clouds for the Christians, while for the Jews is much more of a realistic, pragmatic figure that addresses the people and becomes involved with, of course, the restoration and of course the bringing of the building of a new reality, a kingdom of God on earth. Now, it's obviously, we are introduced to various figures in all these various books, in Revelation, as well as in Daniel, as well as in other passages, of course, that depict even more in detail the Antichrist. The Antichrist, of course, should manifest before the second coming, and the word is found 4 times in the New Testament. So in the first and second epistle of John, the Antichrist is announced as the one who denies the Father and the Son. And there is also those similar concepts within the New Testament that are adapted to be the Antichrist in their interpretation. Like, for example, the pseudo-Christ, the false Christ, which is also found in Matthew chapter 24 and Mark chapter 13. Jesus alerts, of course, his disciples about the false prophets, and they are a form of Antichrist, which abounds in this day and age. Believe me, we are filled with false prophets everywhere. I mean, and they claim to be, if not Christ, almost Christ-like, and some of them perform wonders, but not yet miracles that will indicate they are the ultimate Antichrist. So there is 3 other images associated with the Antichrist in Daniel's, like we said, the final vision. And then we have the man of sin, which is instead addressed in the Apostles of Paul's second epistle to the Thessalonians. And of course, if we want, we can also add to the Antichrist the beast of the sea in the book of Revelation. But Aleister Crowley disagreed with that interpretation and said that in reality, the Antichrist and the beast were 2 separate manifestations, and that he was the beast and the Antichrist was to come. This is the interpretation that Aleister Crowley made of this whole concept. And of course, then we have the Antichrist in the Odes of Solomon, which is the Odes of Solomon is a very interesting collection attributed to a guy who was possibly an Essen who converted to Christianity. And there is the figure of the Antichrist depicted in his work, which somehow has been also, of course, suggested to be of Gnostic origin, but not everybody agrees with that. And of course, there is also the non-canonical Ascension of Isaiah, which is a pseudo-epigraphical Judeo-Christian text, which gives a rather detailed exposition of the Antichrist as Belial and Nero. So we go back to the Emperor Nero, who had his villa in Subiaco on top, and whose pieces of his villa were then used to build Santa Scholastica. And of course, Saint Benedict. No, that is Villa Adriana. That's different. That's Villa of Emperor Adrian. This is Nero's had the villa only in Subiaco.
Oh, okay.
And he, because he liked to close down the river and then play games with Christians on boats and kill them and do.
Oh, because you showed me when we were on the way. I think you
Yeah,
were showing
yeah,
me.
yeah. And Nero, in fact, is the first Antichrist, and it's definitely also very particular that he had his villa in Subiaco, because then Subiaco is the place where Saint Benedict goes in the 5th century and builds the first monastic community in the world with in the cave, though he fights the devil. He fights Satan in the form of a crow on point, and he manages to resist him, and he was in that cave on top, Sacro Speco, which that cave which has also the image of Lucifer.
Is that the one that you went into?
Yes, where I also did I managed to do that photo with the image of Lucifer, which the Vatican doesn't want to show, and closes these gates and opens them only once a week, and there is always a lot of control. So I had to go there with two photographers, you remember, and right at the time in which they opened the gate, and so I could make this photo, which I've used for volume 3 of my Confessions. So this is the story behind it. But like we said, when it comes to the Antichrist and the Protestant Church, of course, like I said, viewed Rome more and more as the Antichrist, just as though they viewed also Islam and, of course, the Turkish Ottoman Empire as a manifestation of the Antichrist. So no wonder now that Turkey is kind of wanting to go back to that ancient role. Things are manifesting on a world stage. Now, Bernard McGinn noted that the complete denial of an Antichrist figure is something that was born with the Age of Enlightenment. So when the Illuminati, the Illuminists, they kind of started to influence the rhetoric during the religious controversies in the 17th century, and of course that the use of the concept declined then in the 18th century with the rule of the so-called enlightened absolutist, and at that point they kind of tended to dismiss this whole thing of the Antichrist figure. The Antichrist, of course, is a character that has a role in the Seventh-day Adventists and Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and many other churches of Christian denomination. But then we have also Judaism. Now, Judaism, how does Judaism view the Antichrist? Because, of course, it's different, the way they portray. An anti-Messiah figure exists in Judaism, but it can't be Antichrist because they don't accept Christ. So how could that be Antichrist? So this figure in Judaism was called Armilus, and he's an anti-Messiah figure in medieval Jewish eschatology who will conquer the whole earth, centralizing in Jerusalem and persecuting the Jewish believer until his final defeat at the hands of the Jewish Messiah. So it's kind of similar, though, if you think about it, also the description of what Jesus, when he comes back, also it comes in this, it's interesting, I think, It's believed that the destruction symbolizes the destruction of this figure, symbolizes the ultimate victory of the Jewish Messiah. So it is recognized even by the Jewish people that there will be a sort of Antichrist, even if, like we said, they can't call him Antichrist. And it appears in some schools of Jewish eschatology from the 7th century in what is known as the Sefer Zerubbabel, also known as the Book of Zerubbabel or the Apocalypse of Zerubbabel, which is a very important series of visions, of biblical visions that supposedly given with the mouth of Zerubbabel, with the voice of Zerubbabel. And I mean, it's different, like I said, from the Christian, because of the implications that are different. But it is rather identical. Some say that at one point in Jewish eschatology, they tried to portray Jesus as an Antichrist. And some of these portrays surface nowadays in many so-called alternative media, where they say, "Oh, Jesus is claimed to, was thrown in and was treated like this and that by the Jews, and so the Jews are bad." Now, it's obvious that there is people that will criticize Jesus within Jewish eschatology because they didn't see in Jesus the manifestation of what they thought was a genuine messianic revelation. They didn't see in Jesus these characteristics, so they didn't accept it as Messiah, and so that means, So there is also a particular guy who is called Messiah ben Joseph in Jewish eschatology. Messiah ben Joseph, also known as Mashiach ben Ephraim, was a Jewish Messiah from the tribe of Ephraim, and they talk about this particular figure. There is, of course, controversies within the Jewish world that regard the messianic tradition and regard people who were, of course, not. Shabbatai Zevi was not accepted. Now, the Jewish tradition apparently alludes to four messianic figures called the four craftsmen. And these four craftsmen are discussed in the Babylonian Talmud. So, but when it comes down to the Antichrist, then we have also, or let's say, we have a depiction that that was made in a writing called "The Messiah at the Gates of Rome." It's a traditional story, a parable in the Jewish tradition from the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 98a. And in this story, while meditating, this rabbi visited the prophet Elijah, and he asked them, "When will the Messiah come?" And he replied, "The Messiah is at the gates of Rome, sitting among the poor, the sick, and wretched. Like them, he changes the bindings of his wounds, but does so one wound at a time, in order to be ready at a moment's notice." And then Joshua went to Rome and met the Messiah and greeted him, saying, "Peace upon thee, master and teacher." And the Messiah replied, "Peace upon thee, O son of Levi." Joshua then asked, "When will you be coming?" And he was told, "Today." So Joshua went back to Elijah and asked what the Messiah said, if it was correct. And he said, basically replied, and he told them, Elijah told them that he meant that his father would have a place in the world to come. And Joshua then said that the Messiah had not told him the truth because he had promised to come today, but he had not. So Elijah explained, this is what he said to thee. Today, if ye will be hear his voice. And this apparently was a reference to Psalms 95:7, and it was like a conditional kind of way of putting it, that he would come today. But the Antichrist, unfortunately, in a lot of this, I see a lot of this anti-Semitic propaganda talks about the Noahide laws, and will these laws be used by the Antichrist? I hear a lot about this because apparently these laws, which were laws that in Judaism, the 7 laws of Noah, are referred as the Noahide laws, the laws that Noah, at the time of the flood. And these 7 laws are not to worship idols, not to curse God, not to commit murder, not to commit adultery or sexual immorality, not to steal, not to eat flesh torn from a living animal, to establish course of justice. Now, it seems more or less pretty good, no? So, but apparently, some people have said that this instead is the Noahide laws will be used for the Gentiles, because you see, at one point, it's like if you live in Israel, they say that you have to accept, and if you're a Gentile and want to live in Israel, so you have to accept the laws. And they say that maybe these laws will be used by the Antichrist on everybody, and that these laws were somehow also passed in our constitution here in America. They were accepted. There was actually an official published recognition in the 1980s. Rabbi Menachem Mendel Scherson urged his followers to actively engage in activity to inform non-Jews about these laws, and eventually there was in 1989 and 1990, Chabad Lubavitch had these Noahide laws enshrined in a U.S. presidential proclamation signed by then U.S. President George H.W. Bush. Now, this, of course, led to a series of never-ending conspiracy theories, and that, of course, I mean, if you want to believe, you can believe in anything. But I'm trying here to, of course, to focus on the reality of things rather than the speculations. So, where did they originate, these Noahide laws? Where they come from? They originate from the Talmud, in the section of the Sanhedrin, Avodah, Zarah, Baba Kama, and Kulin, and they are, I think personally, I mean, they seem good, but the point that the critics make is that the people concerned for this passing of that the Jewish people, because when they went back to Israel, they are trying to force everybody else to accept these laws, and basically the Gentiles to live in the land, they had to agree to abide by these laws. And at the dawn of the 20th century, people, and now that we are in the 20th century, the people believe that the Messianic age is definitely at hand, and that these laws will somehow create an harmonious world without chaos and provide justice. In other words, an utopian world. So I don't see anything wrong with that. But some people think that that utopian world will become more like Karl Marx or Engels envisioned, something more of a Marxist, communist thing. So there is this fear of the Noahide laws, and there is people that have accused, like for example, Trump with the Abrahamic peace agreement of kind of working its way. I mean, all those anti-Semites like Adam Green, all those people talk about Noahide laws here, the Antichrist, Trump, this and that, and all that. No comment. No comment. So you see, there is a lot of, we don't know. Now, in Revelation, there is, in the King James Version, a beautiful passage that Christy will now read.
Okay. I saw thrones and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years.
So the important thing is really not to go for the mark of the beast. I mean, we can study the beast and the Antichrist in Daniel and Revelation. All things have to be considered and reviewed. The one world government is manifesting one way or another, so keep vigilant. The study of the beast, the Antichrist, is, of course, important. I don't claim to be a super expert on theology or eschatology or religion. We are trying here, of course, to, in some way...
you know a lot, though.
Well, I know. I try to bring people the knowledge as, within what you call the Illuminati, the Freemasons and stuff. This has always been subjects that we have studied very much, and I'm glad that within this Exploring the Illuminati Occult series, I was able to just dwell a bit deeply in these subjects. Now, I don't know if Obama is the Antichrist, but for example, I've mentioned him, and I mentioned also somebody else, two figures here, both Prince William and King Charles in Volume 8 as possible candidates, and I explain why in these books. I think that the subject is a very complex subject that probably requires a whole book to really dwell into it and really understand more and more the relevance. I think that it's very important because, first of all, when you wish to be informed about the Antichrist, the first thing you want to know is why he is the Antichrist. He is the contrary of what Christ represented. Christ came as a humble man. He will come as a proud one. Christ raised the lowly to justify sinners. He helped people. He wasn't proud. He tried to forgive even the wicked. And he will, of course, always be, but the Antichrist, he magnifies sinners in the sense that he wants to give sinners a special role and he also tries to lie enough so he builds in them the false assertion that they will probably dominate the world. The worship of demons in the world will be something that the Antichrist will definitely revive. But also there is the possibility that if this temple mount is used for a new temple, at one point the AI could become the central protagonist of this temple. Like, for example, we have seen the AI used in those Japanese temples. You remember we showed some time ago. And of course, the AI is a subject which I discuss very much also in my latest book, volume 9 of my Confessions. But the fact that one day the AI could be there supporting the Antichrist, because some people say the AI might be the Antichrist. I think the AI is cyber Satan. Is actually the manifestation of Satan, while instead his son is, of course, the Antichrist. So some people say Prince Harry, but I tell you why it's not possible. I explained, for example, the role of Prince Harry in volume 8, and I will explain it briefly here because I see there is some interest in the chat. Prince Harry is possibly not the real son of Charles, and the bloodline that he will be carrying in that case is not as relevant as the one that Prince William instead has. So I think that Prince William and King Charles, who has also a very important role, a key role in the Great Reset with Klaus Schwab, is a much more important and central figure. However, we don't know. I mean, King Charles could die, Prince William could die, they could all die, and then maybe we end up with King Harry. Who knows? And then King Harry might end up being the Antichrist simply because somebody who marries Meghan. I mean,
maybe Meghan is.
Maybe Meghan. I don't know. I mean,
remember,
there will be many Antichrists. You will be deceived by many of these Antichrists. But at one point, there will be somebody who will really show himself to be a representative of the unholy Trinity, because you have a Trinity of good and you have a Trinity of evil.
So is this somebody that we're not supposed to know and he's just supposed to pop up? Because we already know who Obama is. I mean, is he just supposed to appear like one day?
Well, no, but
because we've been living in this for a while now.
If now we have chaos in the Middle East, and suddenly you have Obama going to the Middle East and making peace, and then it could become like a little bit suspicious. That could be, I think it could be very suspicious. I mean, it's about he will convert, of course, everybody to his cause, and then he will convert the rest of the people. But first, he will convert the powerful of this world. He will attack places where the Lord Jesus Christ has walked and will destroy what the Lord made famous. And so we need to be keeping guard. And the Muslims also have a view of the Antichrist, the Dajjal. They have always this figure is not really called the Antichrist, but it is definitely also an important figure that we need to discuss, at least briefly, before we end up today's show, because we have, of course, seen the Antichrist in Christianity, the figure similar to him that opposes the Messiah in Judaism, while instead in Islam, the Al-Masih al-Dajjal is the deceitful Messiah. So it's not called the Antichrist, but rather the deceitful Messiah, the Dajjal. And the Dajjal will appear after the coming of the Mahdi, who is basically said to be the future final leader in Islamic eschatology, and who will be the helper of the Messiah, Jesus, who comes back also for the Islamic.
Really?
So the Dajjal is never mentioned in the Quran, but is mentioned, and I think even the Mahdi, I'm not sure if the Mahdi is also, but they are both described in the Hadith, which is the literature, the commentary to the words of the Prophet Muhammad. The Dajjal is described, though, with the one eye, and that's why when the Illuminati have always been described with this triangle with the one eye, immediately for the Muslims, that's the Antichrist.
Oh, that's just great.
So
that's on our dollar.
yeah, the dollar bill, the Antichrist.
That's just
That is because
so what is 1776 the Antichrist? I don't think
no,
so.
but the $1 bill has Masonic connotations that have nothing to do with 1776, and it was brought out a long time after. So there is also hidden announcing. There's a lot of things in that dollar bill. And so, I mean, the dollar bill, but though the dollar bill is seen by other Muslims as positive because it's green, which is the color of Islam. So, you know, it depends on who you're asking. Well, I hope that today in this show we have offered you an unusual view of the Antichrist and a realistic one. Definitely you will recognize him, but by the time you do, it will be too late.
Okie dokie.
Why you say that? Okie dokie. I mean, I hope that we can see the defeat of the Antichrist.
Well, I already know. I
Lifetime.
mean, God's kingdom will reign for 1,000 years, and this is just the preemptory.
But there will be this big conflict. So God bless you all. I hope that can you pass me that book a second?
Yeah.
Because that's an important book that I also, because this is another book that I was consulting today, always regarding the Antichrist and how he will manifest. And this is Stanislao de Guaita, of course, in regards also to the Illuminati. And I must say that the description that he makes is also very interesting, because he also claims that this, you see, Jesus is the head of Christ, basically, of this Christian concept. We saw him, is the head, no? While instead, the Antichrist is like, we have seen for thousands of years the tail of the dragon, but we haven't seen the face. We haven't seen the ultimate emanation of it. The face is still to come, because we have been introduced by the rear, by the tail, to this monster. To this monster that will eventually manifest in the end of times in all his clarity, in all his evil. But we know, of course, that, you know, and that is a very, I think, interesting concept which I picked up from this book. Okay, thank you all. God bless you all. Thank again our sponsors, because they've been extremely kind.
Philippe Belair, thank you very much. Oh, you do that one.
Who? Reynaldo Gonzalez.
You do that one too.
Malgorazzata Minta. I must say, even for an Italian, this name is pretty.
Did you want to do this one too?
Which one is that?
Dennis.
No, that you can do.
Dennis Bolanos Enrique, and then an anonymous.
Okay.
So, if you don't want your name mentioned, just say so. We don't
Well,
have to say it.
one thing, Rambo is
And
sleeping.
Bruce too. Bruce.
And
Yeah,
Bruce
right,
Codish. Bruce Codish.
He's number one.
Number one. Bruce Codish. Rambo.
Okay, I'll get him.
So we can also have.
He's sleeping.
He's sleeping.
Oh, wait, no, he's sleeping.
Now I want to show to everybody that is viewing us today what has happened today, which I think will might change the course of contemporary history, because this is a situation that is unprecedented. I mean, today we had in Turkey a guy who basically, with thousands of people, threatened Israel and threatened a war with Israel and sending his soldiers to Gaza. I mean, guys, this is something else. He's not maybe the Antichrist. I hope not. But definitely Recep Erdogan is rising also and Eliphas Levi said it, when the Turks will rise, that will be the end time.
İşte dünya mazlumlarının umudu, dünya beşten büyüktür diyerek Mazlumların sesi olan Cumhurbaşkanımız Recep Tayyip Erdoğan.
Gergin uykulardan
Could the recipient Zagan be also the Antichrist, or at least the Antichrist helper? He prefers to see himself as the Mahdi in Muslim circles. This is what happened today when Recep Erdogan threatened Israel with war.
Sonra düğüm bilmecelerden bir sabah gelecek kardan aydınlık. Sonra
So we are in front of really historical events. Hope you enjoyed today's show and see you next
It's the dance.
week.
We're dancing with Rambo. Look, I matched. See, I matched. See, we matched. Baby,
You match.
matched my dog.
So were Luther and Calvin not so wrong in pointing out to the Pope and Islam as the Antichrist? See you next week
Bye,
with
everyone.
the Leo Zagami Show. It's heavy.
You're heavy.
God bless you all. And if you want to help our show, because that is something that today we haven't really specified during the course of the show, you can do it with GoFundMe or Cash App. And
Or you can also buy a book.
or you can also buy a book. You can go on leozagami.com and find all the links. I'm going to put here the link for GoFundMe, so we have it. Here we are. Here we are.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Stay safe. God bless you all.
God bless you all. And from Palm Springs, California, that's all. And next week, a little bit more.